I want to show you some.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm showing Prezi and I didn't realize it wasn't on there. Everybody see that clearly?
Yep.
This is a franchise website and blog that we built about a year ago for a client, and they were really stalled on their development. And we tend to blog for consumer stuff and for franchise development stuff. So if you're a business and you're a franchise, you really have two audiences. One of them is your consumers, the people that you need to engage, who are interested in what you have to sell, that you want to get repeat business from. The other really important group for a franchise system is how do I expand my system and get new owners. So if you work in franchise development or have any kind of marketing overlap with development, you really have a different audience for that. Planet Beach is a day spa, an automated day spa, and we had some really dramatic increases through blogging with them. It's, 1,850% increase in traffic in a year, which is a really high. One of the things in today's market, particularly and Joe Matthews is going to talk about this, if you're trying to expand your business, your best chance of getting to somebody who already knows who you are. So we had a 233% increase in internally generated leads, which are people that we drive to the website that get interested enough in the business to want to be a franchise owner. And that's a real challenge. If you talk to franchise systems today, they're really struggling with that. And Joe's going to talk about Franchise Update a little bit about some of the stats for this year, but there have been some changes in the ways people are finding ways to break through to connect to people. And just as important, one of the things that came out in Franchise Update, which is the big franchise development seminar every year, was that organic SEO results, which are when people search for something, child technology franchise or yogurt franchise or whatever the terms are, leads that are coming from those searches, which are not people who already know who you are, but are people who are interested in one of the topics that you write about. We call that visibility. Like, how visible is your brand online across how wide a range of search terms? And so we had a big increase in search visibility. And I want to talk about kind of how we did that. Before I back up, before Brand Journalist, I was a franchisor with a home staging franchise, and I staged lots and lots of houses. And this business would take an empty house that was vacant and for sale. And has anybody ever tried to sell a vacant house? I mean, they're really hard.
You can't really sell a staged house today.
Well, there are buyers because interest rates are so low, so there aren't as many buyers. There's way more houses. But what they really do is it's a vacant house. When you walk in, you can see floors, walls, ceilings, and all you see are flaws. And people spend a very small amount of time. If you've ever looked at a vacant house when you were shopping, they just speed through the house. It's just one room after another. And so what staging does, what we would really try to do is slow people down. Like, how can we keep that person in the house for 45 minutes? And that's a tough, tall order, because a lot of times people are looking at several houses with a realtor, and the realtor's trying to get a sale, and there's lots of stuff working against you. And so we would bring furniture in. My Prezi skills are not where they should be. There we go. So this is same room after furniture. And what we would find out is that there's a little bit of a science and a psychology to staging a house. The way you set the furniture up, the traffic patterns, how each room fits together, even simple stuff like how much red you use in a room and how high the coffee table is compared to the cushions on the seat, all makes a really big difference in what people perceive. And what we found out about with staging houses was that people would go into a house and they would, if you did it right, they would visualize themselves living in the house. And if you've ever looked at a house, you go in the kitchen and you see a really pretty fancy coffee maker, and you go, oh, that's really cool. On Saturday I could sit and read the paper here and have a really good cup of cappuccino, or this is where I could entertain friends, or this is where my kids could do their homework. And you have this whole series of visualizations. And after 45 minutes, what happens is people really get to the point where they can visualize themselves living in the house, and they get so excited about what that life looks like to them that we say in the staging industry, they lick the paint off the wall. So we call that licking paint. If anybody been really excited about something you were going to buy and you just got excited about it? I know somebody's been excited about it.
Oh, yeah.
And so it makes a big difference. That's what you want to do with a blog. That's really one of the key roles of a blog today, is really to engage customers so they can visualize themselves. If you're doing franchise development, they can visualize themselves as a franchise owner in the system. If they're a consumer, they get like a real picture of why they want it. You're kind of getting at it, what's in it for them. So when we say a business blog, in the world of blogging, people tend to think of blogging as blogging platforms. Like I have a WordPress blog, or I have a Blogger blog, or I have a Tumblr blog, and it's not something connected to your website. It's you do this blogging, writing activity like off to the side somewhere, and then your website is somewhere else. And so you have this traditional website product and you have a blog product. What we mean by business blogging is building your website around a blog itself, where the content stream that you write is the focal point of the website. So that when people come to the website, every time they come, there's new content and it's engaging and it's really aimed at helping them understand what you do. It's giving them valuable information. And so this idea of a business blog as a kind of central core function of a website is what we're really talking about. And for those of you that have those, you know there's a big difference in doing it that way and just having an online brochure of 7 or 8 pages for a website, because people really want information today, and their appetite and expectations for information are much, much different than they used to be. So some simple reasons on why we like a blog is it helps people do research. How many of you have bought a mattress in the last 3 or 4 years? Just anybody bought a big mattress? Did you do any research at all when you bought? Yeah? Yeah, like about a car, anybody bought a car recently? Anybody do research when you did online, look at customer reviews? Mm-hmm. We're in the age of expert opinion. We just do, as a culture, we've gotten very research oriented. I know the new iPhones, the Siri, have the little Siri thing on them. You can now do Google searches verbally, like you could just ask it to look something up and do research. Like I want to see customer reviews of so-and-so, and it pulls it right up. So a blog helps you produce content to answer all of those queries. So if you're careful about it, methodical, you can populate a whole range of news feeds about helping people do research about your company. You can increase visibility. You know, we talked about how important that was at the update this year. You know, the more visible your company is online on more keywords and key phrases, the more traffic you're going to get to your website and the more likely you're going to do business. The less visible, it just falls way off. So blog's very important for that. It fuels social media. One of the things we see clients do a lot, and we try to really caution them on this, is they link to articles they really like, because that's a fun thing to do. If you have a blog, you can take an article you really like, you can embed it in your blog, and write why somebody should read it, and then link to your own blog. So when you put it on social media or Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever you put it, instead of sending them to somebody else's website, you send them to your website with helpful information, and you provide the context. And then at the end of the day, you have a visitor to your website who gets a chance to see your story. So thinking about that is a really important way to fuel social media, because you have to have a home base. You can shape public perception of your brand. Now, this is something I borrowed from Joe. You know, people make snap decisions about companies, and you have very little control over that, one way or the other. So, and it's human nature. If we look online, if we think we're interested in something and we research it, we look for positive reinforcement of what we're looking for. If you go online and you don't find good customer reviews and you don't see a lot of fans and you don't see much written about a company, we're human, we make up the worst case scenario. People think, oh, the company's not doing well, or maybe it's going out of business, or it's not a good brand. So the blog's a way for you to proceed to change that. You can also do dramatic increases to traffic. You can generate leads, which we talk about in franchise development. It's very important, but blogs can also generate leads for core business. They can do it at a national level, and they can even do it at a local level. If you have particularly a service-based franchise, blogging locally is there's a big opportunity for you to get local visibility in the city that you're in, because Google gives preference to that. And you can engage customers. So the secret, what we like to say is, and you'll hear this theme come up a lot throughout the day, is that it used to be when you wanted to do business with somebody, either on the consumer side or the franchise development side, you got the chance to do this elevator pitch, and we work. And I was just in one of John Boyan's seminars, a really great business seminar, and he had an excellent how to make a elevator pitch. And if you get the opportunity to actually give somebody an elevator pitch, it's wonderful. The problem is today, so many people you don't ever get the chance to talk to them because they make up a perception of you in their mind. So the content that you have online now takes the place of what used to be an elevator pitch. And so you lose that first conversation with someone. As Paul said, you have to earn it. You have to really earn it. Your content has to be helpful enough and good enough to actually earn that first kind of conversation with someone. Has anybody ever made up, when you're doing any research or shopping, do you ever look at customer reviews or read a blog or see something and you make up a decision about a company you want to do business with? Or maybe you don't buy a car that you would have bought, or you use a different painter because you read a bad review. So if you're really smart about it, a blog really can is the tool you use for some of that. And we like to say that this picture of Hansel and Gretel, the blog's it leaves all the breadcrumbs where people can find you. It's the trails and the tracks, so that people can, whatever they're searching for, they can somehow find their way back to you, and you get on their radar, so you're visible. So the question people usually ask is, that sounds really great. It also sounds like a tremendous amount of work, so how do I blog? And my advice would be, don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. And start with your customer in mind. Every blog has an audience. If you're, no matter what business you're in, you're speaking to somebody specific that's your potential customer, whoever that sweet spot kind of customer is. You want to produce content that helps them. If you're doing sales coaching like John is, give people information that helps them understand how to run a better business. Or if you're doing franchise development consulting or computer stuff, write specifically to the person and think about what would engage them. Make sure your blog's integrated into your website. If you don't have a WordPress built website, then have somebody integrate a blog into your website so that when somebody goes to your website, there's a visible place to look at blog articles and blog posts and news feeds, so that it's in the scope of normal main navigation on your site. And it's my favorite radio station, WIFM. Who knows what that means? Or anybody? Well, I know John does. It's not really fair. What's in it for me? If you, in the storytelling business that we're in, we like to say that the story has to stand on its own. To earn somebody's interest, and it's harder today than it's ever been, you just have to tell good stories. And you do that by making your content really interesting and helpful. And it's not very difficult to do, but it takes a little forethought. You can't just put anything up on your blog. It has to really help people achieve something they want. If you give people what they're looking for, you'll earn their attention, and that's the way it's worked. And so I like this blog quote. This is a title of a blog post. It's kind of a well-known blog post in social media. This, don't read this or the kitty dies. So how many of you would click on that? One. Oh, come on.
We all have.
Yeah, the poor kitty. It's the kitty doesn't have a chance. Headlines when you write blogs really have to be compelling. And, we tend to want to write stuff because we're trained as business people to write in this kind of business speak with lots of jargon and very company announces such and such and this monolithic kind of voice. Make it conversational and give people a reason to click. Make it interesting, make it compelling, make it captivating, make it helpful. You don't always have to kill kitties in your headlines, but stop and put a thought. Ask yourself, it's what we do with our writers in our office. Step back and ask yourself, would I click on that if it came up in a search engine result page? If the answer is yes, you're onto something. If you really don't think so, try to rewrite it a few times and really put some thought into it. No. I'm striking out on the Prezi thing. It's a little more complicated. Bear with me here a minute.
It's coming.
All right. One thing that everybody in the room is expert in is we're all expert in filtering out advertising messages. Would you agree that we have a filter where if you think you're being sold to, that you tune out? How many think that's an accurate statement? Yeah, there is not a person in the country that chooses to tune in to advertising messages, and there's a good reason for that. The real reason is we're just bombarded by 3,000 or 4,000 messages a day. We've got so inundated with junky kind of conversational stuff that you just tune it out. So when you're trying to communicate with a customer and you're trying to influence somebody to think positively about you, or you're just trying to earn that chance to have a conversation where you can give them your elevator pitch, everybody has earplugs in, so you have to think differently about how you communicate. And that means you have to talk in a very conversational tone. We like to say, write on a 4th to 8th grade level. And believe it or not, writing on a 4th grade level is really hard. And most of us write on a college level. Getting it down to a high school level takes skill, getting down even lower. And what happens when you go lower down in the age levels is you use simpler language. And if you're not a person who uses a lot of $5 words in your vocabulary, what will happen is you'll end up writing like you speak, just in very common language. And a magical thing happens when you do that. People become less transparent of your sentence structure and your vocabulary, and they really tend to follow along because it is conversational. And Pam Coyle, who's going to be doing one of the roundtables at lunch, is going to talk about writing styles and voice. And if you're interested in that, you definitely should attend that one. Oh, come on. My apologies for that. Let's see. So that brings us to this concept of brand journalism. Has anybody heard of that term? It's been a buzzword.
Yeah.
If you're a marketing or PR person, you would know what it was. The general idea just is that to replace traditional PR, marketing, and advertising writing style, like business writing, you throw that out the door and you get back to doing what journalists do. Journalists have a really tall order. They have to get people in a big newspaper to stop and read out of maybe 100 or 200 articles in a paper. Like the average person might only read 3 or 4 articles in a paper. So to do that, you really have to earn it right. And so writing in a journalism style, which is very common words and a conversational tone with very interesting information, with not a lot of fluff and with no jargon, has really taken the place of traditional marketing writing and business writing. It used to be you had business writers who were like highly trained in how to integrate technology terms and industry terms, and it's changed a lot. Yay, it's not working. So a blog is an answer to, when you're writing blogs, a blog is an answer to a single question. How many of you know the kind of common questions that your core customer would ask? So what would they be? Like what would you?
In our case, it's how to drive sales activity. It's going to be a conversation about how to shrink my order size, sales cycle, increase average order size.
Yeah, those are good ones. Anybody else have any typical questions that we'll ask you? What would your customers ask?
How do I use the expertise of a scientist in today's training?
Yeah. Anybody else have this typical question?
How much money can I make if I buy a franchise?
That's a very common. You'd be surprised at how much when a lot of franchise development companies are putting item 19s online in the format of a web page or a blog, really to answer that question, and it gets a lot of traffic. Stop and make a list of the common questions that you think your customers will ask. If you don't know, ask a customer. They'll tell you, what are the common questions. Every one of those individual questions is a really valuable blog post for you to write. And it might be, how do I shrink my order, my ticket size, or the cost per ticket in this particular industry? If you write something about that, there's an audience of people that will listen to it. Let's see if this works here.
I hear you say more often, you can blog that. You should blog that.
Yeah.
That's a blogging story, and it's true. Just about everything can be blogged. Somebody's going to read it, you can blog about it.
So a client that I really like, who's a very, very smart client, sent us this in an email. We will soon be rolling out private cloud solutions for small businesses that provide the benefits of load balance, scalable pay-as-you-grow data center clouds delivered at the client site. What's wrong with that? BJ's the only guy who'd get that. That's an actual email, so I gave it to Greg, the core one of our writers, and he called me up and he goes, dude. And then there was a pause and he goes, dude. I don't know what any of those words mean. He's not a tech person. How do I figure that out? Well, keep in mind that even if you're writing to an audience that understands the industry you're in, you still have to really police jargon. Jargon is just a killer when it comes to the work you're doing. I apologize. It's Prezi I recommend, but like learn a little more about it.